So we all have times in our lives when suicide seems closer than not. What emotion was flowing through you as you were creating Larry?
I was just focused on creating something that felt real, that felt true to my own experiences and the experiences of a lot of other people, a lot of other young men potentially, that maybe feel, inadequate, or they feel like they're missing something in their lives. I don't know whether, maybe there's more of that now than there has ever been as a result of social media and things like that, I'm not sure. But I just wanted to do something that was relatable, something that I felt close to, because as a writer, I feel like I need to at least be able to relate to the lead or to the subject matter, because if I can't, then you're creating something entirely from scratch, and finding truth in that is always going to be a bit more difficult,
So, and you guys can break in on this one. How did Calvin and Kevin develop chemistry before you began to shoot? And what was remarkable to you about how they connected, even beyond your script?
To be honest with you, we had Calvin cast like a good few weeks before we started shooting, so I was kind of building more chemistry with him. But then it was only 2 weeks before we started shooting that Kevin came on board. So actually we kind of ran out of time a little bit, and it was just a case of, I think, what did we have, like a couple of Zooms with the three of us or something?
One Zoom? We had one Zoom, which was the...
God, I didn't do very well, did I?
No, but I think it's one of those things where, because of like the way we'd been cast, and also just the working together, it just developed naturally. And it had that with us as well, when you guys were setting up shots and filming, but also like in between we were staying in the same cottage as well. But I think it happened. It just happened naturally.
Yeah.
Like even the traveling to each different location as well, that was like so much fun doing that. We had an RV which we sort of drove to location in. And I think it just developed naturally, really.
I guess like the way that the schedule worked as well, a lot of it wasn't necessarily shot chronologically, but it wasn't far off.
We tried to make it as close as possible.
Yeah, so I guess we shot a lot of the stuff at the start of the film when we maybe don't have the most warm connection to each other anyway. Yeah. So, I guess that really helped, because by the time we got to filming the last few scenes, we had already spent, 3.5, 4 weeks together. So we had kind of been developing that chemistry as the film went on anyway. So I think we kind of got on it instantly, but we were able to kind of just develop it as we experienced what the characters were experiencing in a way, I guess. So it was really quite organic.
So you, of course, portrayed a key character, Dean, in the film, correct? What was the best advice the director gave you on the character?
So wait, what's the best advice I gave myself?
Yes. I think that's how you interpret the question.
God, what a weird question. What was the best advice to give myself? It was just to be free. I think for this character to work, I had to be free, and I had to get rid of the ego, ironically, because I think he is a bit of an egotistical character. But I had to free myself of the ego and free myself of judgment, kind of like what Kevin was saying. You just have to not be afraid of people judging you. But in my instance, it was more like the crew and cast judging me because of how outrageous my character was, and just kind of. And also it helps that my fellow actors are so supportive, because, for example, my character was flirting with Larry a lot, and if I didn't have such a good relationship with Calvin, that would have been very, very awkward, But it was awkward, but for all the right reasons,
Yes, exactly.
And it was just funny, and we laughed about it. But, we had that safe space to kind of to experiment and to have fun. And even as a director, I also was just experimenting and improvising, and they were doing the same back to me, and it just made for a really fun scene, really fun shoot, and
Awesome. The irony of a writer not being able to write their own suicide note is meta cool. How did the final result come together? How did that final line that was going to move his character come together?
it was really important for me when writing that final letter that Larry writes. One, that it was to himself, because obviously that was kind of like what it was leading up to, because they had the conversation prior, which was, well, why are you doing this then? Why are you writing a letter? You know, if you're not going to, anyone's going to see it. But the whole point all along really was that it was for himself, you know, and it was really just his way of trying to understand why he was going through this. And the important thing for me to tell the audience in that moment was that it doesn't need to be some big event that leads to these kind of feelings. That, as Larry says in his final note, you know, there wasn't anything categorically wrong with his life, but yet he still feels these emotions and he's still in the position that he's in. And I think that was the most important thing for me, was just to make that clear, you know, that people are struggling, they don't have to go through anything traumatic, and that was the case for Larry, you know.
And this follow-up, so you filmed in the Isle of Skye. It was your only set. How did you and your director of photography work out the scope of what you're going to shoot?
That was actually really quite difficult, because a lot of the recce's took place on Google Maps. You know, because I'd never actually been to the Isle of Skye. I set the entire film there, but I'd never been. I just knew that it had this kind of magical quality that would really, you know, lend itself to this film. And especially Dale's character as well, you know, like even like the stories he's telling, you know, about the fair folk, the fairies, even though I shouldn't say that, you know, all of this sort of stuff. You know, it really lends itself to the film and to his character, and like, you know, the kind of place that you'd feel like this sort of person would grow up, you know, like isolated on this beautiful place, you know, or like near this place, you know, in the Highlands. But yeah, it was very difficult. It was probably one of the more stressful things about this film, about shooting this film, because what we did 5 days of recce when we got there, without the actors, without anyone. It was just me, the DP, and a couple of other guys, Will and Tevin, who were assisting, and we were just driving around the island all day long trying to find the right locations. And obviously I had an idea in mind from Google Maps, but Google Maps only tells you so much. And then, but even within those 5 days, we couldn't really nail down every single location we needed for an entire feature film. So what would happen is that on, you know, our days off, you know, we'd kind of do like 5 days roughly of shooting and then 2 days off, kind of, but then it was, you know, it was a bit flexible, but you know, roughly 2 days off. And in those 2 days off, I found myself and the DP sort of driving around and trying to settle on locations, and we would sort of rope a couple of other people to come with us so that we could, you know, take images and like sort of block out scenes and figure out choreography and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, you know, it was tough, it was stressful doing these recce's, but it was also a highlight for me as well. Exploring locations for the first time and, you know, trying to picture how we were going to make a film there, so yeah.
So, 2 more questions. Which of the characters would you like to have dinner with, and what would you discuss?
I would have dinner with Larry and I'd tell him not to do it. No, I mean, yes, I would. No, I'd have dinner with Larry. I love Dale. I absolutely love Dale, but I think Larry needs... He just needs a little bit more attention, I feel like. So I wouldn't want him to not feel included to this dinner party. I think Dale would be okay waiting outside. He'd probably talk to, like, I don't know, the chef or someone, you know, in the kitchen. But yeah, I would talk with Larry and I would share my experiences with him. I'd hopefully give him a safe space to share his experiences with me. And, you know, we'd try and find common ground and form a rapport.
Final question. What's the first thing you think about when you think about your love of filmmaking and performing?
I think about how much peace it brings me to watch a film. Okay, I know that sounds weird because making a film is like ridiculously chaotic and stressful, and I absolutely hate every second of it. But when you get to sit down and watch it like we did last night, it honestly makes it so worth it. I mean, that's why I do it. The reason I make films is because I love films. You know, I try to watch a film every single night, which I know most people probably don't have the time to do. I don't have the time to do it either, but I do it anyway because I just love film so much and I get so excited about film and I can't imagine doing anything else. So Yeah, it brought me a lot of peace in my life, and whenever I was struggling with anything, you know, even some of these emotions that we were discussing, I think film was kind of that safe haven for me, that place that I could retreat to and just kind of get lost and immerse myself into. So.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2025.